You're listening to Brave Girls with Tracy Im, where we choose to empower you to be a better leader, mentor, and coach in the world. We'll share stories of people who have achieved great heights by overcoming adversity and rising to the challenge, all while pursuing their passions. These courageous people will inspire you to have faith in yourself and take bold action. Right here with the host of Brave Girls, Tracy Im.
Episode 49, Give Back with Kristin Hancock. On today's episode, I interview my first Canadian Brave Girl, Kristin Hancock, who bills herself as the most fun person you know. She's an experienced corporate communications professional that now has her own consulting firm where she advises organizations on best practices in employee engagement, communications, and more. Her goal is to help her clients create an environment where employees love to come to work each and every day. She tells her story of growing up in Canada and her career experiences with major brands and nonprofits like the Ronald McDonald House in Winnipeg. She shares the impact of losing her brother and how that life event changed her perspective on so many levels, and how important it is to be purposeful in all that you undertake. Her vibrant personality comes across, and she talks about why giving back is so important in life. I think you'll love her Navy SEAL aspirations and her advice regarding leadership as a woman. We talk about ageism and sexism and how to deal with these biases when you encounter them. Kristin is excited to be moving from her home in Canada to living in the US with her prospective husband and continuing to grow her business. So let's listen in to what Kristin has to say about creating positive environments where everyone is seen and heard. I can't wait to see Kristin soar and touch more lives through her Brave Girl gifts. So let's meet Kristin. So welcome to Brave Girls with Tracy M. Tonight, I'm so excited. I have my first Canadian, Kristin Hancock, joining us on the show. And Kristin is up in Winnipeg, and I met Kristin through a mutual communications colleague, Chuck Goss. And so he said, you definitely need to meet Kristin. And I was just cracking up when I saw her bio because she claims that she's the funnest person that you ever met. And I really thought that I was the funnest person that you ever met. So welcome to the show, Kristin.
Thank you. I'm excited to be the first Canadian, and I think we can share the fun title.
Okay, good. So you're a communications pro, and you have been at the game for quite some time, and you grew up in the prairie of Canada. So tell us a little bit about your backstory and how you got to where you are today, because you have your own firm.
I do now. It's sort of an interesting journey. I didn't set out to be in communications. When I was all through elementary school, junior high, high school, I wanted to be a teacher until I spent a day in the classroom with a teacher.
Well, there you go. Good thing you found that right away.
That's exactly what happened. I spent the day in the classroom with a teacher, and I kind of went, this is an incredible job that I do not want. So then through high school, kind of decided, well, I should go into business. I had talked to one of the guidance counselors, and I said to her, what I love is public speaking and event planning. And, I want to do all these great things, writing. I'm a great writer. And she said, well, you should go into business. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, isn't there a lot of math in business? Because I'm not really a big fan of math. She's like, no, it's fine. Once you get past the first year, it's not too bad. Well, that is a lie. It is all math. Anyone in business knows it's a lot of math. So I, speaking of brave things, I suppose at age, 19 or 20, in my second year of university, I dropped out. I dropped all my classes, went home and said to my parents that night at dinner, they said, well, how was your day? And I was like, well, I dropped out of school. They were like, okay, what's your plan? So I said, I don't know. I don't know what my plan is, but it's not what I'm doing. I ended up kind of stumbling into communications because I was looking for a course of study for a friend of mine, and was reading this description of these courses and kind of went, you can do this for a living and people will pay you to write and speak and plan things. So that's sort of how I fell into it. Kind of ended up then going the nonprofit route for a lot of different
Right.
personal, professional reasons.
Right.
Thought I wanted to do the corporate corner office, rolly chair kind of thing.
Right.
And kind of learned that wasn't maybe what I needed to do at the time. So,
Yeah. So, and there's definitely a lot of communications jobs in the nonprofit world, and you worked for some really big organizations that were really impactful. So talk a little bit about that, because I know you worked for Ronald McDonald House, Children's Wish Foundation,
I did. And Children's Wish was where I started right out of college. And it was a part-time contract job. It was not full-time. It wasn't permanent, but it was just such a great organization. From there, actually, I was volunteering at the time with Ronald McDonald House. And on one of their committees, I overheard their executive director talking about this Ronald McDonald family room that they were fundraising for. They were going to be building it inside our children's hospital in Winnipeg. And I overheard her say something about, well, when we hire for that position, and my ears kind of perked up, and I asked her after the meeting, are you hiring a full-time person to run this program? And she said, yeah, are you interested? And I was like, this is it. This is the job. This is the dream job. I still say I've been now in my career for probably 10 plus years. If I never do anything great in my career again, that program will have been enough, because it was just such an awesome labor of love. We built this program inside children. So for people who aren't familiar with Ronald McDonald House, the house itself, of course, is usually just steps away from the local children's hospital. But one of their newer programs is the Ronald McDonald Family Room. And those programs, it's a space that's built inside Children's Hospital. And they use the space for families who have infants and children who are so serious, their cases, their medical conditions are so serious that mom and dad and siblings can't leave the hospital. So they can't even walk steps away from the hospital. So it's a space for them to be in and to stay overnight that feels like home, or as close to home as you can get. So it's interesting because that job technically was not communications on paper. My title wasn't communications, but it involved a lot of what I had learned in school, and it was managing a program and recruiting volunteers and training them, and figuring out hospital policies and getting the word out in the hospital so that staff knew that they could recommend families.
Right. Right. Yeah. The Ronald McDonald House is an amazing organization, out there in the world, helping so many people when their family's in a time of crisis, and providing that stability, whether it's making sure they have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, making sure they have a place to do their laundry, and making sure that they have transportation if it's not steps away, but it's, a couple blocks away. And so it's such a good program. And, I got to believe that set you on a really strong path forward to all the things that are involved with all the different stakeholder groups.
It did. And I think it was such a bigger job. I think it grows as I grow in my career. I look back on it and I don't think I even realized how, I knew it was big then, but I don't think I even realized I knew how big it was back then until now. And it's interesting that sort of set me on a path. I'm a sibling of, you have a younger brother, but he passed away when I was 19. And so that shifted my whole perspective. Of course it would, right? And the loss of any loved one it shifted my perspective on what I wanted out of my work life. That's sort of when that shift happened between, I want to climb this corporate ladder and sit in a corner office, to maybe I want to do those things too, but I would like it to have meaning. And I know I would not have gotten involved with Children's Wish or Ronald McDonald House if that hadn't happened. So that sort of propelled this area of life where I also realized I am not a person who does very well in a job that I don't feel personally connected to. It doesn't have to be charity work per se, but I need to believe in what I'm doing to be fulfilled in that role.
And how does that translate now to the work that you do with your clients?
It's I started my business in October. After Ronald McDonald House, I worked for about 5 years in a very corporate environment, which is sort of funny after all of these things that I've learned. And of course, life takes us different paths. And so there was a period of time for the last probably close to 5 years that I did work in that very formal, structured corporate environment. I learned a lot. And one of the things I learned is that I don't function best in this environment. I need to be responsible for my own time and accountable to myself. I needed that flexibility in the hours and client work and variety. So I guess a lot of what I took from those experiences now with clients is digging deeper with them and finding out what their purpose is. Again, it's not always sick children and their families. It doesn't have to be something like that, but every organization, every company has a deeper purpose.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it takes a special person to really uncover that for the organization, and someone who understands human psychology and emotions and connections. And then you're able to bring to that your consulting and your best advice.
Yeah. And I think interesting, one of the clients I started talking to when I first launched my business was a cosmetics and skincare company. And interesting because that industry, pun intended, can be very surface level. It actually can be very ugly in many ways, right? With women and expectations and beauty and all those kinds of things that go with it. Stumbled across this company and happened to end up chatting with one of the owners at an event they were hosting, not on purpose, just sort of happened that way. And that was one of the things we started talking about, was that industry, and that him and his wife had created this brand because they wanted to highlight Canadian women who were making products. They wanted it to be environmentally friendly and all of those kinds of really good things. And that was their purpose. So it was happening through cosmetics, but there's always that deeper underlying kind of purpose. And that's been really cool to hear, from clients. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. So the other thing I was kind of cracking up when I got your bio, when you talked about when you're not making magic happen with communicators, you're probably giving shelter dogs too many cookies or training to become a Navy SEAL. So tell me about both of those.
There's a little bit of personality in there for you.
Yes.
I started volunteering. My parents have always instilled in me that volunteering and giving back is so important. And so growing up in a very, very small town, we were always involved in something, whether it was a fall supper or, a kids carnival or whatever that might be, community center. We were always doing something to give back. I didn't see it as volunteering and giving back when I was a kid. I saw it as that's just something that you have to do. So it sort of stuck with me, and I've always done some kind of volunteer work, but usually it has been communications related. There's all kinds of, I always tell, especially students, there are all kinds of amazing nonprofit groups that would kill for a communications person or some communications input. They can't afford it. Well, that's a win-win situation. If you're a student and you're trying to get your name out there, you want to give back, the organization's happy to have the input. So that's most of what I was doing when I was volunteering. And the last couple of years, because my job was so corporate and so formal, I was really craving volunteer work that kind of had nothing to do with communications. And I have always had dogs my whole life. I do not have a dog right now, and I was in pet withdrawal and found a local animal shelter. It's the City of Winnipeg Animal Services, and they have a fantastic volunteer program. They were thrilled to have me come once a week, and so I still go on Saturdays, and I'm wearing rubber boots, and it's not glamorous. Dogs don't care if you look good when you show up.
It's true.
It is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a piece of, just it's about being well-rounded, kind of. you know?
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
That one's selfish. That one's for me.
Yeah. So are you training to become a Navy SEAL? Are you like doing marathons and like riding your Peloton and
Yeah, I wish. No, I am pretty active with the gym and running and things like that. But it sort of became this joke that I have been I've tried for years to get a job in the United States. It's really, really difficult with immigration to do that. And then I started thinking, someone made a joke one time about, well, if you join the military, that's an easy way to get citizenship. So this was this joke and I said, well, what kind of military role would I want? And I thought, well, if I'm going to be in the military, like, let's just really do this. And let's just.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, if you're going to go into the military, you might as well be a Navy SEAL. I've since learned it's a little bit, challenging maybe to have that role, like a little bit physically challenging, more so than I'm prepared for. So it's become this ongoing joke that like one day I'm going to be a Navy SEAL because I can probably do 10 or 15 push-ups. So that's pretty close.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty much there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think so. But you are probably coming to the U.S.
I am. The things we say to ourselves in life, I have said my whole life, I would never move for a boy, ever. I would never move. I would always move for myself or for a job. Well, for years, like I said, I was trying to get a job in the U.S. Didn't work. A couple opportunities that fell through and nothing seemed to be working. Well, then wouldn't you know it, I meet a boy and he is in the U.S. So yes, at some point we're waiting on immigration paperwork, but yes, at some point I'll be moving to the U.S. to be down there with him and his kids. So yeah, it's exciting. It's a lot happening at the same time.
Yeah. Well, you threw it out to the universe and now it's happening.
That's exactly right. Yes, exactly. We manifest what we think. And so it didn't happen the way that I expected, which is always how life goes, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so I kind of want to pivot a little bit to you have had many roles in professional organizations as a leader. And some of these organizations are volunteer, so it's different. But even in your days in corporate and your days at Ronald McDonald House, what have you really kind of learned as a woman, as a leader, as a woman, and what are some of the things that you find have helped you become a better leader?
When I first started at Ronald McDonald House, I was very young. I was relatively fresh out of college. And I will admit now that back then I was the person who argued that there was no glass ceiling and that women weren't treated any differently. And why should we be I'm embarrassed to say this right now, but it's the truth. Why would we be fighting for women's rights in the workplace? Because I do the same job as men and everything's the same. And then I got into the workforce and had a little healthy dose of reality. My job at Ronald McDonald House involved me having a lot of meetings with senior hospital leadership to make sure that things were moving forward, and there were a lot of policies we had to implement, things like that.
Right.
My very first meeting with their C-suite team, one of their, I don't know if it was their CEO or COO, when I walked into the room, asked me if I had brought the coffee for everyone because I was young and I was female and he didn't know who I was yet. And so I kind of innocently looked at him and said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was supposed to bring that." Well, then someone else stepped up very quickly and said, no, you weren't. It's okay.
Right.
But it was then I stepped back and went, oh gosh, this is a thing. It is different to be female in this kind of environment. And it opened my eyes to everything else that's going on. And never mind that, I am a white female, so I automatically have more privilege than women of color and women in the LGBTQ community and all those. That's even more of a battle than what I have faced. So it's opened my mind to a lot of other possibilities. But I've also interestingly mostly worked in the nonprofit world, and also my corporate job was in sort of indirectly related to healthcare at a nursing college, which in Canada is like your state board of nursing. Very female dominated fields. And so was the nonprofit world, at least where I was coming from. So that was interesting too, because I also, on the flip side, saw a lot of very strong female leaders, female executive directors and female CEOs, which is the flip side of it, right?
Right. Yeah, I when I was in a leadership position at one company, I had a girl that worked for me who is now a multimillionaire entrepreneur, and she was probably 26 or 27 at the time, and I put her in charge of a multi-million-dollar project, and we did competitive bids, and so we brought in the three vendors, and I was the boss, but I basically turned the meeting over to her to run, and I wasn't that much older than her. And the person on the other end from this vendor wanted to wait for the man to enter the room that was going to run the meeting. And I said, we don't need to wait for anyone. She's running the meeting, and she's the decision maker. And she tells this story all the time from stages where, I mean, she's now literally like hanging out with Richard Branson. I mean, she's done very well for herself. But at the time, she just was so grateful that I backed her in that situation that, you know, she was not even 30 and she looked like she was maybe 14. So she looked even younger, but yet she was the most competent person on my team and the most capable individual that I had. And I had entrusted her to make the right decision to run the multi-million-dollar project. And that's why I picked her. And I felt bad that she was treated that way. And it wasn't that long ago that happened, you know? So it's just,
that, you know, she was competent to handle that. Completely.
But I've also had situations where I walked in and they thought, where's the coffee?
Right.
So I've had that same experience. But, you know, the thing I find is that as women, we have such strong intuition, and sometimes that we just have to trust our intuition.
Yeah, absolutely. I found the age thing coupled with the female piece, even in my last job, in communications, where I'm from anyway, is a largely female dominated field. And my previous team has, for the most part, been all women. And we've struggled, the last place I worked, we struggled a lot with being the youngest team, you know, and some judgments that come with that too. And I think that ageism piece exists for all generations, right? If you're the youngest or the oldest in the organization. And so, it was, that piece is sometimes a struggle too. And so combining that with, you know, women in the workforce and the age thing, and you're trying to make your mark and be seen and be heard, it can be really tough.
Yeah. So in your business, it seems like you have a variety of clients that you're working with. And it seems like you have this interest in human connection. Talk a little bit more about some of the things that you do with your clients, because I'm just curious about that.
Well, so far, a lot of the work that I've done with clients, interestingly, because it's not something that I've focused on, has been a lot of the technology implementation. So I'm not working on the tech side of it, which is probably best for everyone, but I'm working on the side of translating that technology piece into the human form, you know, and helping employers understand what their employees need and want out of those kinds of solutions. So it's been really, it's been really eye-opening to have conversations as an outsider with employees saying, please tell me and share with me, what are the challenges you have at your work? What frustrates you? What works amazingly? What do you love? What do you not love? What do you wish was here? You know, do you use your phone at work? What would you use it for? And I am almost surprised. I shouldn't be surprised, but I have been surprised at how much employees will share when you don't work for the company.
Oh yeah. Well, and some of these questions that you're asking them, I'm sure their employers never even asked them that.
Right. Exactly.
And especially if it's been like a large corporation that's been in business for a while, they haven't caught up. They're about 5 years behind on the whole, everybody's on their phone. It's 24/7. It's information overload, plus getting your job done, plus dealing with your family. And so I think sometimes as communications professionals, we have to kind of close that gap for these companies of like, this is what's really going on with people.
Yeah. It's sort of an interesting conduit position, I guess, because the leadership teams at these companies are listening because presumably they've hired you to get that information, and employees are sharing with you because they know that you are that trusted source outside the company, and there's not going to be reprimanding for it or anything like that.
Right.
But it has been rewarding because someone asked me what would be my vision, my goal, like an ideal world, blue sky, whatever. And I was like, I want everyone to look forward to going to work. That's what I want. Because I have been in positions where I have not looked forward to going to work. I think we all have, and we know how much that stinks and how that feels. I've also been in positions where I can't wait to get to work. And I know how amazing that feels. So how cool would it be if we could create companies where people look forward to going to work? They don't have to love every minute of their day. There are always going to be frustrations, but how cool would it be if everyone wanted to go to work in the morning?
So I think that's great. What are some of your ideas? Like, I'm just curious.
We have a few hours here.
Yeah. Well, it just sounds like very rose-colored glasses to me.
Right.
I mean, your environment is so much of it. And I agree. You're not going to love every piece of it, but like, are there going to be like, wow, this is great. I get to do this every day. Like, I guess maybe I have had more times in my career where I haven't wanted to go to work.
I think that's probably common. I think many people have had more times where they don't look forward to going to work than do. And I don't think that I think that we are doing a disservice if we think that every single employee is going to be A game, keener, I am obsessed with what I do. No, that's not realistic, and that's not a fair expectation either.
Right.
So that's why I say I want everyone to look forward to going to work. You don't have to be passionate about every single thing you do at work all the time. Some people are totally fine coming to work, enjoying what they do, saying hi to their colleagues and whatever, and going home. That's okay. You don't have to, and not everyone has to want to be the CEO, but you should dread going to work in the morning, And I think that starts with the one-on-one conversations that we have with employees and with our staff.
I think you're right. Well, it's like that African saying Ubuntu, which is everyone wants to be seen and heard, right? Yes. And so in the tribes in Africa, I can't remember which country, they say Ubuntu, which is it's almost like namaste, right? Like I see you. And I think that's what a lot of organizations have lost.
Yes, I totally agree. Yeah. And I think they've lost it on a grand scale, but are forgetting that they can get it back by focusing on a small scale.
Yes.
So it's about focusing on those one-on-one interactions with your staff. It really is about, is each manager meeting with their staff one-on-one? Is each manager saying hi in the morning? Hi, how are you? How was your night? What are you up to today? Like just that personal connection. I guess you could dig even farther back and say that also means you need to hire the right people who are going to be able to do those things. And you have to train. Not everybody is like a born leader. Correct.
And a lot of times what I've seen is that the technically competent person becomes the supervisor, who then becomes the manager, who then becomes the director. And just because they're technically competent doesn't mean that they're the right person. It's a different skill set to lead a team and to have those people skills. And you can teach some of it, but some of it has to be, I think, natural. It has to come to you naturally.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that I tested out. My staff didn't know I was testing it out, but I was testing it out. They were the unknowing guinea pigs. One of the things I tested out in my last role was developing a system of meeting on a regular basis as a team but also meeting on a regular basis, one-on-one with each staff person, and not long meetings, half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. The team meetings were once a week. The one-on-one meetings were once a month. We held them consistently without fail. They were rescheduled if we couldn't make it. But the reason we did that was because it also gave them an opportunity to voice concerns to me. So it was my opportunity to check in with them. How are things going? Very targeted questions. There was a worksheet that we both filled out, acknowledged work projects, but also acknowledged, is there anything else that is stressing you out right now that I need to know about?
Mm-hmm.
Because then that's an open conversation, between staff and manager and teams and all that kind of stuff. Just to keep it all out there. And there are things that came up during those meetings that I know wouldn't have come up if the opportunity wasn't there to meet. If they had been forced to request a meeting time with me to tell me about whatever was going on, whether it was work or home or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they would have, because it's very awkward to do that.
Yes. I think that creating those forums and staying consistent is so critical.
Hmm. We tell people, bring your whole self to work. Well, have we created safe spaces that encourage people to bring their whole selves to work? I don't know that we have successfully.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that if there's people that are listening to this podcast who supervise teams of people, that some of these are thought starters for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because sometimes you get so busy filling out paperwork and forms and doing your projects and checking your to-do lists that, just take that pause and say, am I creating a safe space? Am I being consistent in my meetings? Am I, creating an environment where people do look forward to coming in to work?
Yeah. I've shared this story in presentations I've done. I had a staff member years ago who had gone away on maternity leave. And so in Canada, that's a year or longer now. Actually, I think it's up to 18 months now. So she'd been away from the office for that time. She was coming back. This was it was my first year as a manager in any form, and my first staff member who had gone on mat leave and was coming back. And long story short, when she came back, her phone wasn't hooked up properly. She couldn't log into her email. So, an hour or two into the morning, I said, hey, is everything okay? What's going on? And she tells me all these problems. Mm-hmm. My response to it as a new manager was, I was mad at IT and I was going to phone HR and what happened and nobody did this for her. I was all upset about it. Well, a month or two later, when we had our one-on-one meeting, I asked her how things were going and she said, well, it's going a lot better now. And I said, oh, was it not when you first came back? And she said, well, when I came back and I was gone for a year. And when I came back and nothing was set up for me, kind of felt like nobody cared if I came back. And it broke my heart, but it was such a powerful lesson for me it wasn't about her email and her phone. It was about how she felt coming back to work. And that was my job. I could blame anybody I want. That was my responsibility.
Right.
So sometimes we learn our lessons the hard way. Often we learn our lessons the hard way.
Right.
So I cleaned up the next time she came back was a much better experience. But again, if we didn't have that safe space for her to tell me that, I would have never learned that lesson. Right. I was ignorant to it. So it's just, it's a powerful place when employees feel emotionally and psychologically safe at work.
Yes. I agree. Yeah. So my finale question is always, what's the bravest thing that you've done and how does it inspire you today? And it sounds like you've done a lot of brave things, but seriously, what is that thing? And it could be anything really.
I was thinking about this today and thinking about, we often don't think the things we've done are brave.
Correct.
But they are. And when I decided to leave my job and start my own business, I went to a session for women business owners. So it was a room full of about 40 women, all of whom had either just started a business or were thinking of starting a business. And at the beginning, we went around and introduced ourselves and kind of gave a little snapshot of where we were at. And I had said, I said, this is my first week of self-employment. I just left my job and I'm starting my own company. And later on in the room, one of the women said, I'm so-and-so. And she said, one day, I hope that I'm as brave as Kristin is. And I thought, oh, I'd never thought of it that way. I didn't see what I was doing as brave or courageous, but that's how she saw it, like leaving your job when you're on your own and you're responsible for your own income and all that. But I will say, I think to date, the bravest thing that I am doing is going to be moving to the US. I am a small town prairie girl. I have never lived more than 8 minutes from my parents. This is going to be the biggest change in my life. And it's, as all brave activities are, it's terrifying, but it's also going to be the greatest thing that I've done. So stay tuned.
Yes. Well, and we'll have you back on the show after you've moved and you love it so much. And
I can give you all of these are the things I've learned about America.
Exactly. But I think it's all going to be great. I think you needed to leave your job and create your own thing so that you would be available for the opportunity once this immigration thing works itself out, which it will. And you're going to be with a fabulous person who's just super, super awesome. I'm a big fan of his. I just, he's so smart and he's so fun. I know. I had no idea that you guys were together, but I think it's going to be really good. And I think you're going to have so many more opportunities even once you move as well for client opportunities. With your, just your background, there's going to be people in organizations in your area that are going to want your services, and even across the U.S., I think, because so much of our work these days can be done by computer and remote and Zoom and, all the technology has really, I say it's democratized and leveled the playing field in so many ways that, I'm just so grateful because of it allowing me to do podcasts and interviewing people all around the world and spreading my message of, girl power and being brave. And there's women out there that have, just have these incredible stories that are so motivating and so inspiring to me. And I get that feedback from my listeners too, that there's probably something that you said in the podcast that neither of us thought anything of it, but somebody's going to be listening to this audio and they're going to be like, truth bomb. I need to hear that.
I hope so.
That, and we don't even realize what it is that's going to really help them. Be brave, look at things differently, think about so many things that maybe weren't even on their radar screen just by us having the conversation. So if people are looking to find you out on the interwebs, what's the best way for them to find you?
I am on every form of social media. My website is KristinHancock.com. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Send me a request. Personalize it so I know why we're connecting. But any of those places.
Okay, and I'll be sure to put that in the show notes. I'll have a direct link over to your site and to your social media so that people can find you. But I just really appreciate you. Being the inaugural Canadian on the show. I just am so grateful. I'm just so, so grateful.
Well, I am grateful for you reaching out, and it was a pleasure being a part of it. It really was.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, Kristin.
Thanks, Tracy.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. as much as I did creating it. Each show is produced with you, the listener, in mind, as you look for inspiration and motivation from other brave souls as you pursue your desires. I'd love to hear your feedback, so please leave me a review on iTunes. I read every one. And check out my website, tracym.com, for more free resources. You can also join my list and sign up for my newsletter right from the homepage. Until next time, stay strong, believe in your dreams, and go do something brave.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. and hope that you enjoyed the show. For more information about today's episode, as well as additional free resources to help you achieve greatness in your life, visit tracym.com and sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, dream big, believe in yourself, and let your brilliance shine as only you can do.